A way of life, a way of life, a way of life, a way of life. Islam is a way of life, a complete way. Islam solves all of its problems. Allah leaves no stone unturned. Perfect with no flaws at all are the laws of Allah. A way of life, a way of life, a way of life, a way of life.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All praise belongs to Allah, and may His peace and blessings be upon His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I welcome you, dear viewers, to this episode. I'm your host, Musa Cerantonio, and we are joining our dear Shuyukh to discuss the topic of the Quran in the life of Muslims. Joining us to contribute to this discussion, we have Sheikh Abdurrahim McCarthy from the USA, Sheikh Mamdouh Muhammad from the USA, Sheikh Salim Al-Amri from the UAE, and Sheikh Muhammad Al-Sharif from Canada. May Allah reward you all for joining us. Now, when we say the Quran in the life of Muslims, this is something that is relative to each person. You'll find that some people have memorized the Quran is close to them. You find other Muslims who maybe once a week they find a little bit of time to skip through a page or two of the Quran. So we see that there's different levels, there's different attachments that a person has to the Quran. So to begin with, we want to talk about first, I guess, the relationship of a person with the Quran and why we need it in the first place.
I'll lay a foundation for what I've seen in the community and our approach to the Quran. Sometimes you have this heavy emphasis on reciting the Quran without understanding what it is. And even another heavy emphasis, I have no problem with encouraging children to read the Quran, and maybe they have a party and there's a celebration, but why only once? And why go all these years and the child's only read the Quran once and a big deal is made out of it? That's fine, but it needs to be more than just being read once. The other thing that I see, that when people do approach memorization, again, there might not be the understanding, but they might only memorize like Juz Amma, the final part of the Quran, and then they stop as well. And they might have memorized that when they were younger, and for the rest of their life they say, that's it, khalas, I don't have anything. And then the only time then that people are returning back to the Quran is in Ramadan time with the Taraweeh, and even then, the focus is on just praying the rak'ahs and not necessarily contemplating the verses.
Juzu Amma, maybe with it, Surah Yasin, and the rest of the Quran is left. And something I want to point out here at the beginning is that I want to remind the Muslims, talk about the Quran in our lives, going back to Ramadan, the beautiful effect the Quran has on us during Ramadan. And when we hear the Quran, we read the Quran, and how it actually guides us, it makes us better Muslims, it makes us feel better inside. This is something, and one of the hikmas, the wisdoms behind these ibadat, these worships that we do in Ramadan, is to encourage us to keep going after Ramadan. And that's why we need to focus on the Quran. We need it all year long. Not like you said, read it once in your life. We need it every day. There needs to be a certain amount of the Quran every day in your life.
Now, you're using the word need here. I'm going to go back again to the basic. Why do we need the Quran? What are we losing if we never touch the Quran for the rest of our life? Sheikh Mamdouh.
It means to me that losing your life now.
Everything. You lose everything.
Yeah, because we Muslims take our religion from the Quran and from the Sunnah. So mainly if we are away from the Quran, so we don't know what the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the halal and the haram. We don't know the history of the previous nations. We don't know the issues that are related to Tawheed. So the whole religion is taken from the Quran and from the Sunnah. And it's not enough, of course, to listen, to get this information from your father or your mother, because not all of them are on the same level of education. So you need all the time to learn the language by yourself and to have this relationship with the Quran. But I would say that one of the ways that would help us to have this relation with the Quran is to read the Quran, parts of the Quran, on daily basis at specific time.
In a routine, a daily routine.
Once you develop this routine, it becomes a habit that it becomes later on difficult to change. And most of the people that I've seen, they are either do it after Salat al-Fajr in the morning if they work starts late, or they do it between Maghrib and Isha. So if we develop this habit of reading the Quran, and the most important thing, as the Sheikh said, that some people make the emphasis on just the reading. You know, reading itself without understanding may be very dangerous. You may be reading something and you're doing the opposite thing because you don't understand it, and we've seen many examples. So I would say that read and understand. So even if you read and understand 5 ayat per day, it's much better than reading a couple of pages and without understanding anything. So I said developing the daily routine with the Quran until it becomes part of you.
Here's a practical implementation of how to do that, because I know everybody wishes to do it, and after Ramadan they get excited, they do it for 1 week, 2 weeks, and then khalas until the next Ramadan. It's not that they don't have good intentions, they do, but they just don't know the technique. So one thing that I found to work is, like Dr. Mamdouh said, to have a habit. My habit would be, after each salah, recite, a small portion. For me, it might be like 2 pages. For somebody else, maybe half a page or more or less. But I found that if it's something small where you come at the end and say, I can do more, that's fine, then stop. So that you can keep, each time you keeping a desire to read. The other thing that I was saying actually in a previous episode about daily deeds. If you have a to-do list, and on the to-do list or on this daily deeds it says, did you read Quran today? So that at the end of the day, the only way you can check it off is if you read. So you might come at the end of the day, click, oh, I didn't read Quran, so then I can open up. A third thing that I would say is there's many Quranic apps that people can put on their phones. And that doesn't require internet, because we know there's the issue of the internet. Don't worry about that. The Quran, it saves your page. You can put bookmarks and flip through the pages, and you can always have access. You just pull the phone out, start reading Quran, and you're...
And something I mentioned, I remember when Sheikh Muhammad mentioned like a little bit after every salat. That's very beneficial, something I try for myself, and it's something I benefited from one of the workers we had in the college with in Medina. He said one of my relatives, he's a regular guy, but he said his relationship is better with the Quran than most people who are really practicing Muslims, are really serious about da'wah and all this. He said, why? He said, because he made it, and he won't change it for anything. He would read himself about like 2 pages before each prayer, go a little bit early to the masjid, and 2 pages after each prayer. So he would read a juz or 2 a day at least, and he would not leave that for anybody. He said we would go out in the car and he has to read these 2 pages. He doesn't care, he wouldn't go out. So when you get into that routine, and like Dr. Mamdouh mentioned, if you have the time in Fajr, that's the best times for a lot of people. Or to seclude yourself perhaps in the masjid, sit between Maghrib and Isha, get that ajr, and sit there and read. You have to have that time, you have to have that program where you do it. If you do that, you'll be successful in reading constantly. And like Sheikh Muhammad mentioned, it could just be 2 pages, it could be a half a page. Now, because what we need, as the Prophet ﷺ said, the best and most beloved deeds to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, adwamuha wa anqal, the ones that are persistent and always constant, even if they're small. So you have that consistency all the time. This is important. And as Sheikh Muhammad mentioned, that what happens if you find yourself you can do more, then do it. Shinqaiti mentioned when he was teaching us in the Prophet's mosque in Medina, that he said when it comes to Qiyam al-Layl, praying at night, he said everybody tries at the beginning to do it an hour before Fajr, and they do it for a few days and they leave it. He said, no, don't do it like this. He said, do it before you sleep. Start this way. When it becomes a routine, he said, then switch it before Fajr, half an hour only, or 20 minutes before the Adhan. He said it becomes a routine, you can't make it 30 minutes, make it 45, then make it an hour, and then it'll be easy for you like that, inshallah ta'ala.
Now you've mentioned, or most of you have mentioned, the routine here.
Yeah.
And it's good to point out that we as humans, we already have routines. There's the routine of eating, because our body needs the foods. We have the routine for fitness. Maybe this is the next level that some of us are missing out on, but eventually if you're missing out that
don't
much...
look anywhere here, Buzz.
Not pointing fingers, but if you lack this, eventually your doctor is going to pull you into line and say, look, if you don't fix this, you're going to have problems with your health. Then we have the next level, which is what the spirit needs, what the heart, the soul needs. And this is something that a lot of people won't call you into line. Your doctor's not going to say, have you read the Quran? Your mother's not going to, well, at least my mother's not going to say, have you read Quran in the morning as just like you had breakfast? So you say, this is the next level. And I'll ask you this, Sheikh Salim. I mean, if a human being was to live without food or exercise, it's going to harm him. Is the Quran just as important as these things?
Alhamdulillah. Yes, the Quran is very important. The Quran is the word of Allah, the speech of Allah. And what made the Sahaba unique, the Quran. This Quranic generation, that you will not find any parallel for that generation, is the Quran. So the Quran is the word of Allah, the speech of Allah. Allah speaks to you. You don't want Allah to speak to you? You don't want to hear Allah's word? And we all know that towards the end of time, this speech, this word of Allah will go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it is from Allah started and it will go back to Allah. As the Prophet ﷺ said, a night will come and the Quran will be removed from the books and the breast. And we can elaborate more inshallah after the
Inshallah. We're going to go to a very short break, may Allah reward you all. So dear viewers, do stay tuned. We'll be back after a short moment.
Islam solves all of its problems.
ولقد يسرنا القرآن للذكر فهل من مدكر.
And we have indeed made the Quran easy to understand and remember. Then is there any that will receive admonition? Learn the language of the Creator's last testament in Learning Quranic Arabic every Monday, Wednesday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Saudi Arabia and 7 p.m. UAE on Peace TV. Marriage or divorce?
What's Islamic ruling?
Husband wants to give divorce.
Solution or problem?
Joint family system.
Heaven or hell?
Big fat diseases have become the norm.
You choose. Beauty, wealth, family status, virtue. Decide what you want. Decide your choice. Be sad or be happy. It's your choice. Join Dr. Zakir Naik in Better Half or Bitter Half today at 7 p.m. Saudi Arabia and 8 p.m. UAE on Peace TV.
Some Muslims worship Allah in different.
Concrete solution.
Is it allowed to do things that just we enjoy?
Complete solution.
Is it possible for someone to worship other than Allah?
Sufficient solution.
This act is not accepted.
Examine the factors focusing on the fact that every problem occurs to be solved. If it is properly diagnosed,
when you're doing worship to Allah
and treated in solutions,
you're being obedient to Allah.
Solutions. Next on Peace TV.
Islam solves all of its problems.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers. We're here discussing the topic of the Quran in the life of Muslims. Now, before the break, Sheikh Salim, you're mentioning some points about why we need the Quran, the importance of satisfying our soul with the Quran.
Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, is warning us actually in the Quran. وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أعمى قال ربي لما حشرتني أعمى وقد كنت بصيرا قال كذلك كآياتنا فنسيتها وكذلك اليوم تنسى. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, whoever turns away from my dhikr, and the Quran is dhikr, not only alif lam mim harf, but alifun harf, lamun harf, mimun harf. Not alif lam mim is one letter, no, alif is a letter, lam is a letter, mim is a letter, and you get for every letter 10 hasanat. It is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whoever turns away from Allah's dhikr, what will happen to him? فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا. He will have miserable life, narrow life. A person who is away from the Quran, he is living in misery. He has narrow chest. He has depression. A person reads the Quran, the depression will not find a place to his heart. So when a Muslim sister or a brother calls you have depression, he said, because you are not reading the book of Allah. You are not maintaining your prayers. So you are away from Allah. This is what Allah is saying. وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا. So whoever turns away from Allah's path, from Allah's remembrance, from Allah's dhikr, he will have this dank.
Is that always the case? Sometimes it could be medical that they have depression.
It can be medical, but if a person is really attached, because the Quran is shifa, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. The Quran itself is a cure. Is a cure and rahmah. So if you read the Quran, you'll have this sakina. So the depression will not reach your heart because you are content. The fear will not find a place to your heart. وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. And he will be raised up, resurrected blind on the day of resurrection. And he would ask, قَالَ رَبِّي, oh my Lord, why did you raise me up, resurrect me blind when I was basir, when I had my sight in life? He said, because my ayat, my signs came to you, but you neglected them.
Just picking on that, I just like the effect of the Quran on our hearts. And it happened even to the non-Muslim. Just last night, it's not far, I was invited to a house of a Canadian brother, and he had a group of people, and one of them was Chinese. And he started asking some questions about Islam, and more particularly about the Quran. And it led me to think of an experiment that I have made in other places. And I told him, okay, I'm going to read now from different sources, and you tell me which one you think that it's the words of God. He doesn't understand a single word of Arabic. And I started reading some poetry, started saying some prose. I made a very small speech, 1 minute. Then I recited something from the Quran.
But then when you did it, you went like this to him, right?
Yeah? When I read the Quran, I don't do that. No. In fact, I try to be, even I didn't intentionally try to use the tajweed. Yeah. So I just read the verses. I wanted to be as neutral as possible to see the effect of the Quran on people. So definitely he selected the verses from the Quran, but the key issue is that when I asked him why, he didn't say anything except that it gave me some tranquility. Without understanding anything, he felt very comfortable with these words. Did you have the same feeling with the others? Of course, no. He said, no, it's different. Then I asked the brothers, and what do you think, that this is the word of the Quran? They said, yes. So he was sure that, alhamdulillah, it is the word of Allah. So this is if you don't understand the language, and you can see it by your life. Ask yourself, if you are a non-Arabic speaking, and you're standing in the salah, and you're listening to the Fatiha 17 times a day, try to multiply it by 1 week or by 1 month, and you don't understand it. Still, it has positive impact on you. And the evidence is that you come regularly to the mosque. But try to apply this even to the best song in the world. If you repeat it 17 times a day for a whole month, you will go to the hospital. Definitely they will take you to the hospital. It's impossible because of the impact of it. But the Quran, you listen to the Fatiha, you listen to the Quran all these years, and you don't understand any part of it, yet still you are attracted to come and to listen to it.
SubhanAllah, you know, growing up, I was a non-Muslim at this time. I actually had Lebanese neighbors. And they spoke a form of Arabic, if you want to call Lebanese Arabic or not.
The dialect slang of Arabic.
And we used to joke about them, saying this is the most brutal and ugliest language we've ever heard. They would play their music, and we would say this is the worst music we've ever heard. And growing up, we used to joke about this. You know, the Arabic language, it doesn't sound very nice. And this might be true according to how some people speak it. But the moment that I heard the Quran, and even my family, they would hear it and they say, are you sure this is Arabic? This sounds nice. And it's calming, it's relaxing. So you're seeing this in there, that even the same language used in another context, it doesn't have the same effect, it might even be ridiculed. But then when they hear the Quran, and I'm a testimony to this, subhanAllah, it's not the same. It's definitely not the same.
I would like to say, you know, going back to your question, which is it important, like, you know, food and drink and so on? And I know we've gone down the path of, you know, kind of like the feeling, even if you don't understand it, but I was saying in the beginning that not understanding is a problem.
It is.
That the Quran was revealed to be understood, not to just get a tranquil feeling and stuff like that. So I would answer that question about how it's needed. You imagine a whole field and it's full of landmines. And the Quran tells you where all the landmines are. And so in life, you're going to have to cross this field. This is, on the other side is death. You're going to have to cross the field. And the Quran tells you where the landmines is. And somebody says, I'm not going to read the Quran and I can live without it. Boom, and then they get hit. Boom, they get hit. Boom, they get hit. They lose their children. They fall into zina. They fall into depression. All these things happen because they haven't looked at the Quran so that it would give them life.
And this is very important. Sheikh Salim also will highlight about this, is that a lot of the people now, and so many people, and it's starting to spread even to the Eastern world now, to the Muslim countries, I'll say, where it's very popular in the West, where people have these emotional illnesses. And this is because we have the cure in Islam, but unfortunately the Muslims don't benefit from it. The Quran, the effect it has on you, even like you mentioned, non-Muslims who hear it, when you act upon what's in it, is what we see in Ramadan, the spiritualness that people feel because they're acting upon Islam, they're acting upon the Quran, they're listening to the Quran, they're reading the Quran, the effect it has on them. And they don't feel this dunk, this miserable life, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran. We have the dhikr, we have the prayer, we have the Quran. If people implement this, it'll be very difficult for somebody to find these emotional stresses. Might find difficulties in life, but it'll help you deal with it.
Yeah, but depression is something very complex. I think it's too simplistic to just say that, oh, read the Quran, you won't have depression. If you understand depression a little bit more, there's a lot going on, and I think it might even make people feel sad when they feel depressed and somebody's telling them, hey, if you only read the Quran, everything would be solved.
I believe that, there's some middle grounds to this. I don't think it may be that far or that far. I think it'd be more in the middle. If you are reading the Quran, okay, and you're acting upon it, and you're reflecting on the meanings, in the Salah, the Prophet ﷺ found difficulty. He used to say in the prayer, "Arihna biha ya Bilal." We find the coolness of my eyes in the prayer. So it's going to help you deal with these stresses. So you might not reach the level of depression that you would reach
How's
without
it going
the
to
Quran.
help you?
I'll tell you how it's going to help you. A person who becomes depressed, maybe he has some problems and he cannot handle them due to the weakness. There is weakness inside because the Iman strengthens you from inside. So it gives you this strength inside, which is the Iman, which will help you to overcome these obstacles. And it tells you life is full of tests. And it tells you that the reward will be proportional to the test. So this is the effect of the Quran. Okay? But if you don't have that in your heart, when these problems happen, you just break down because the heart is weak.
But sometimes somebody's in a good Muslim family and they wear hijab and the father's, going to the masjid.
This is the problem.
And they're depressed.
No, we should not be deceived by the looks. What is there in the heart? If the heart, as Abu Hurairah said, Al-Qalbu Malik, the heart is the king, and all the limbs are soldiers. So if the heart is strong, then the rest will follow. And the fear starts in the heart. When you become afraid, the heart starts trembling.
But I think the example that he himself gave has the answer. It was a nice example, the landmines, and the Quran tells you that how to handle this, to go between them. So if a person hit one of these landmines the first time, it exploded, then if he goes back to the Quran, he will learn how to avoid all these ones.
This is exactly Allah saying in the Quran, Yahdi lillati hiya aqwam. This Quran leads to that which is the most straight.
But when it achieves this, when it touches the heart, as perhaps the Shaykh said.
And Allah Himself, He says, Shifa lima fi sudur. It's a cure for what's in the hearts. So if we're acting upon it, anybody, even non-Muslims, when they're feeling stressed, when they hear the Quran, even if they don't understand the Arabic, and we don't want to focus too much on the feeling, Sheikh Muhammad mentioned, because it's not we're just looking for that higher tranquility.
It's very important.
But it is important that you'll see that they'll find ease, they'll find this inner peace when they listen to the Quran. So no doubt life is difficult. We're here to be tested. And the Quran itself teaches it. You say you're going to believe, you're not going to be tested. You're in difficulty. So the Quran is showing you these landmines, that life itself is going to be difficult. You're going to find stress.
Here's a sister, she's at university, she wants to study something. Her parents tell her, no, you have to study accounting, for example. And she just wants to maybe just get married and leave the country. And she's now depressed. And you're telling her, if only you had read the Quran, you wouldn't have been depressed.
No, this is
another problem. Different types of
even this problem
of depression. Different types of depression as well. This is we're talking about some people who live in constant depression, and there's people who you're going to find depression from a certain problem you're facing. How you deal with that?
Even this problem, Sheikh, because if she had been brought up, raised as a lover of the Quran and being obedient to her parents because the Quran teaches her how to be obedient.
And the parents are pulling those verses out and telling her, you have to listen to me because the Quran says
Not you have, because she should be trained to do this when she was young, not at this age.
What if the parent is giving her wrong advice?
The parents are wrong.
So the
we
parents
should
would be...
see two wrongs, they don't make something right.
وَإِنْ جَاهَدَاكَ.
So yes, there are many, and those parents really, they are not good examples.
So then she's confused and then she becomes depressed.
I think we can address it in the...
Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the episode, leaving on a point that we have to deal with. Before we finish, I have to mention that even the Quran tells us, go to the people of remembrance if you don't know, if you have a problem. So no doubt, if anyone does have problems in their life, don't just consult a doctor. Go to see your doctor, psychiatrist, psychologist. All of these people are going to have a solution, but also see your imam, your sheikh. Inshallah, both of these, consulting the people of remembrance.
Seek the advice of your Lord, akhi, the healer. Subhanallah.
Of course, make sure that we challenge on all these fronts, just in case anyone is in this situation, they want to know what to do. Make sure that you're not just sitting back, make sure you're proactive. May Allah reward all of you for joining us in this episode and contributing to discussion. Inshallah, we hope to have you in our future episodes. And dear viewers, may Allah also reward you. We hope, inshallah, that you'll stay tuned when we continue to discuss this as well as other topics. Inshallah, we'll see you then. Until then, I greet you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
A way of life, a way of life, a way of life, a way of life. Islam is a way of life, a complete way. Do you know what Islam says? It says that life's the greatest test. It says that life's a borrowed space, returned upon rest. A way of life, a way of life, a way of life, a way of life. Islam is a way of life.